world of cable news screaming and social media echo chambers, it's easy to lose the signal in the noise. Every day, policy is debated, votes are cast, and your tax dollars are spent. We cut through the headlines to bring you the critical context you need, focusing on what's really going on in news and politics. Welcome to the Analytical Iowan Podcast. This is your daily dose of fact-driven politics. Let's analyze today's news. Here's Eric.
We are back here on the Analytical Iowan Podcast. It is Wednesday, August 19th, and getting to this a little later in the night than I had anticipated. Sat down to record some TikToks and saw Mike, the Rational Boomer, was doing a live, jumped in on his panel, and that is going to be his podcast for tomorrow, for Thursday. I was just a guest over on the Rational Boomer podcast for today's show. Encourage you to check out both shows. Now, I'm not as involved with the live this time. They didn't ask me as many questions. They focused a lot more on the other guest, which is perfectly fine. And I do appreciate the points of view of the other the guests there on the live, because everybody has a different point of view, a different set of experiences, and they all know different things. So, as we're gearing up here toward the midterms, we're looking ahead. And now that a lot of the primaries are underway, we know who's running where and all of those things. And part of today's podcast is going to be going through and talking about the results from last night's podcast. Not last night's podcast, last night's primaries. We talked about some of them on last night's podcast. But I wanted to go over a few of them yet again. Now, we had some upsets in Florida. Okay. I think everybody expected Ashley Moody to win the Senate race on the Republican side. But Angie Nixon beat Alex Vindman. And everybody thought Vindman was going to be the odds-on winner. He outspent Angie Nixon, and it wasn't even that close. Nixon got, looks like 56% of the vote. That's pretty significant. And Nixon is more of a Democratic Socialist, a more progressive candidate, where Vindman was viewed as more of the establishment candidate. So that's kind of a big shock there. Now, there's questions as to whether can Angie Nixon win the Senate race in Florida. And I think it's going to depend a lot on the overall mood and the position of Florida. Now, Florida also has a governor's race. And Byron Donalds, the African-American member of Congress, who is a Republican, won the Democrat or the Republican nomination. And I would say not decisively by any means. He got 47.8% of the vote. And if you look at total number of votes cast, there was a lot more cast for the Republican, but his closest competitor got 25%, whereas David Jolly, who got 61% of the Democratic vote, his closest competitor was at 15%. So that's a big difference there, right? Now, there's only about 50,000 votes between Byron Donalds and David Jolly. And the reason I bring it up is because I think, much like how I talk about Iowa with Rob Sand, and I think his momentum could bring people out to vote for more Democrats, and drag some Democrats across the finish line to win seats in Iowa. I think Byron Donalds could actually be an anchor in Florida. and actually cause Republicans to not vote. Um, I don't think they are going to select the African American as their governor in Florida. I just don't. Now, of course, you're going to see a bunch of TikToks. I'm already seeing them already of Republicans saying, well, get that, liberals. We just selected the black man to be the next governor or our nominee for governor in Florida. We're winning. How many of those do you have party wide? One or two? See, they're trying to point to Byron Donalds as some kind of a we're not racist um, trope. And very much feels like the I can't be racist, I have a black friend uh, stereotype, right? The thing is, the majority of the Republican Party is white. And by even a bigger extension, some of them are, or most of them are male. Um, and they want to try to say, though, we're not racist, we're not sexist cards. But they are. And they're supporting policies that are very racist, very sexist. They support people like Charlie Kirk, who said things like, if I saw an African American flying the plane or as the pilot, I would question whether or not he was qualified. Doesn't matter that they have to go through the same amount of training as a white pilot. Kirk would immediately say, I question whether they're qualified, based on nothing more than the color of their skin. And they support people like him. They go through things, and they were trying to make, uh, you know, nationwide Charlie Kirk memorials and all of this stuff, like he was some kind of influential major political leader or movement, right? You have Donald Trump pushing for ICE and deporting people and all of that. Whenever um, a person of color is arrested by law enforcement, we always hear the same thing. Well, they should just comply. Doesn't matter what law enforcement did leading up to it. It's always, well, you should comply. Or, well, there's underlying circumstances like the whole George Floyd problem in Minnesota. They want to excuse the fact that law enforcement knelt on the back of his neck, closing off his airway for 7 or 8 minutes, um, and say, well, he had convictions for drugs in his past, or he was doing this, or he was doing that. None of that equates to being executed by the police. We have, courts for that. If he really was a criminal, sure. Should he have been arrested? Sure. Should he have been detained? Sure. He did not deserve to have somebody kneel on the back of his neck until he died. And they don't understand that, right? And they support the people that do those things and then want to say, see, we're not racist. We have one black representative or one black person running for Congress or governor or what have you. It's ridiculous, okay? But I really do think that with Florida, Byron Donalds could be an anchor that ends up bringing the Republican Party down in Florida. In fact, I got an article here from The Hill. Donald's on whether Trump will campaign with him. That's his decision. Let's see. Representative Byron Donalds said yesterday after securing the GOP nomination for governor, it is up to President Trump to decide whether he will campaign with the nominee ahead of November. Donalds, in an appearance on News Nation's On Balance, heralds Trump's endorsement of his bid to replace term-limited Ron DeSantis. Now, see, if they didn't have term limits, they would have gone with DeSantis. We wouldn't even be talking about Donalds. Donalds told the host Leland Vitteret, "It gives you a great lift in our party, but you got to go in and put in work. And in my campaign, we've been putting in that work every single day for 18 months. And that's why we're successful tonight. So the president has great support here in Florida and continues to have great support in Florida. He continued, well, it's his decision if he's going to come down. When he said that when talking about whether Trump would join the efforts on the ground, uh, he outlined his campaign plan for the next 77 days, including crisscrossing the state. He said, well, we're going to be talking to voters all across the state because it's about keeping the Florida dream alive. And that's what the people of Florida want to know about. But here's the thing. If Donald Trump does go down there, first of all, and no president would do this, Donald Trump is not going to be a major part of the ground game. It's going to be one or two rally speeches, and that's about it. Maybe one additional appearance, and that's it. It's all about one, Donald Trump doesn't want to do a lot of work, and two, and like I said, most presidents don't do a lot. They've got other things to deal with. Now, Donald Trump really doesn't want to be president. He's got other things on his mind. He's got renovations. He's got Natalie Harp. He doesn't really want to stump for these elected Republicans. The only reason he is doing it is because he knows on some level, and I don't know how much he knows because of the dementia, um, that if the Republicans lose the midterms, then his term is done, right? He's not going to get much accomplished. Now, Donald has a chance to make history as the first black governor of Florida. He graduated in '02 from Florida State University after uh, transferring from Florida A&M, which is a historically black school for higher education. Florida A&M has strong political base and has motivated voter turnout for younger audiences in previous years, which helped propel Andrew Gillum's career in politics as mayor of Tallahassee, and ultimately the Democratic governor nominee in 2018. But he lost to DeSantis. Now, DeSantis has not endorsed a candidate in the primary, but was speaking highly of Donald's competitor, Paul Renner, and DeSantis said hadn't been part of any major victories over the left in recent years. Donald says he has a plan to win. How we do this for the November election is stay focused on kitchen table issues. Number one, driving down insurance costs in our state, having a real plan for that. Number two, how do we build housing more efficiently? And how do we get government costs out of the way? 30% of the cost of a new home is government costs, not a faucet, not a sink, not a roof. Donald's ad, and in the third place, how do you balance the growth that is coming to Florida, making sure the quality of life remains while you continue to expand the economy and have high paying jobs? Well, I can answer part of that. You want to bring costs down for building and construction? You quit backing Donald Trump and ICE. It's that simple. We have been hearing all around the country, and this has been going on for months now, that construction companies and other jobs cannot find help because they don't have the immigrant workforce they usually rely on. Now, not everywhere, but in a lot of cases, from what I have seen and what I have read, where they're struggling, it's not that the jobs are necessarily low paying, especially in construction. It's that they can't get people to continue to show up and work. The so called American citizens that don't want immigrants here doing those jobs will not go out and get those jobs. Now, I say so called American citizens because they think they are the only ones who deserve to be citizens, and they are people who look like me. They are of the white persuasion with skin tone, and they believe that they and they alone are the only ones that are worthy of being called American citizens. They want to treat everybody else like a second class citizen. And, you know, if you are here and working, you know, they want to see your papers. They want proof, and they always complain that you're taking their jobs. The problem is, like I said, they can't get these so-called American citizens to do the jobs. Or they do, they take the job, they get less production out of them, and they turn around and some of them don't even make it through the day. I'm not the only creator talking about it. And that's not saying that white people don't work hard. There are a lot of them that do. I know people in my own family who have worked the trades and make good money doing it and made a life out of it and never had a problem. That's not my point. With these overarching generalizations, though, you see a lot of these construction crews that are mostly Hispanic. And some of the things I have seen them do myself, uh, is ridiculous. I lived a few years ago in a row of duplexes that was all owned by one company. And there was probably 30 to 40 duplexes in this uh, lineup. Each half of the duplex was 3 bedroom duplex, right? Decent sized places. And they needed a new roof. They brought in this crew to do it, uh, and they were done in, I think, with all of them in under 2 weeks. Might have even been that they were done in a week. I don't entirely remember. It's been a little while, but it was within 1 to 2 weeks. They did realistically 40 houses, and I couldn't tell you how many people were on the crew. I didn't pay attention. I was working overnights at the time. I was just grateful when they were done with my roof, so I could go back to bed and not be and not have to put up with it. Because whenever they do stuff like that, it does throw off your sleep schedule when you're a night worker. But anyway, the whole thing is these uh, companies and these contractors, they're not finding help. They're having to pay even more to get people on their crews. And if they're paying more and getting less, they're going to charge you more money, right? To do the job. Now, I know there are certain fields that have like minimums, and that becomes an issue within itself. When you're talking about the trades where, oh, a job like this is supposed to run you so many hours, we're going to charge you so many hours one way or the other. That's an entirely separate issue. But when you're talking about building new construction, um, you need to have crews willing to work. That would cut out part of it. Now, there is a lot of red tape, from what I understand, in Florida because they have to be built to withstand hurricanes. And as we're seeing with other things in this country, that cutting the regulations doesn't necessarily help, right? You can say, well, we're going to make it more affordable. We're going to cut the red tape. But what happens when you cut that red tape and the next major hurricane comes through? Well, those houses that were built under the revised, lessened guidelines aren't going to stand. And that becomes a problem. Now, he also wants to, uh, you know, make it more affordable. One of the problems is they can't get it. From what I'm hearing, they're having trouble getting insurance in Florida. A lot of the major insurers have pulled out, leaving those that are left paying triple the rates because there's not the competition. And they got to figure out how to handle that, whether that's a government subsidy, um, and tax credits or things like that for insurance companies in Florida to come in and insure places? I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but those are things that they can look at. But he didn't really outline any of his plan. He just said, we're going to have a plan. That comes with, trust me, I'm going to fix it. And I've never really been a supporter of anybody on either side of the aisle that comes across with, trust me, I can fix it. Looking back to the 2004 election um, with John Kerry. And that's really what I felt. Maybe it was because I was younger and I wasn't paying close enough attention. Um, but I don't remember ever hearing out of John Kerry a lot of plans. I heard a lot of he fucked up the economy, talking about W. Bush. We can fix it. But I didn't remember hearing a lot of plans. Now, on the other side, one of the reasons I never supported Bernie Sanders wasn't because I didn't like what Bernie was promoting. It was because, um, well, a lot of what he says is things we need. He is right. We need to promote free schooling. We need to promote universal health care. We need these things, right? The big thing there is when he came to time to pay for it, he said, "Well, it'll work itself out. It'll pay for itself." That's not a plan, and I just couldn't get behind it. Maybe that is still part of my conservative upbringing in the back of my head, saying, "I don't like that." But you know, if there was more of a concrete way of covering it, if he would have come out and said, "Yeah, we're going to tax the top 1%. We're going to raise their taxes 20% to pay for it all," done. He would have had me, and I probably would have been a Bernie supporter all the way through. But he didn't, and that's one of the issues I have with some of these uh, politicians. If they don't end up um, coming up with a plan. Now, let's see if I can find the results here. I was going to go to Alaska next because Alaska has a seat that is up here. And Alaska could be one of the ones in play. Here we go. I think I found it. For well, excuse me. Uh, I was looking for the results of the Alaskan Senate race. Now, this comes from NPR, but with it does look like in the governor race, it's going to be it's going to be a Democrat versus a Democrat. It does look like, um, which is going to be interesting. I'm looking to see who the current governor is. Was the current governor is Mike Dunleavy, and I was just seeing if he was on here. No. So apparently did not run for re-election. Um, it doesn't look like. And it looks like it's going to be a Democrat versus a Democrat in the November race. Now, it looks like it's going to be Jonathan Crease Tompkins versus Tom Begike. I don't know if I said that name right. If I butchered it, I apologize. Um, so that's going to be interesting. The governor race in Alaska will be a Democrat. That will be a flip. Looks like a guaranteed flip. Now, in the primary for um, the Senate race in Alaska, it looks like they are calling it for Mary Peltola and Dan Sullivan, the incumbent, are going to be going head to head. But the way it looks so far is Mary Peltola is ahead of Dan Sullivan in at least the primary ballot casting. So that is going to be um, another race to watch. I've been saying that the Senate race in Alaska is one that could flip. And right now it is looking like that prediction could potentially come true. Okay. We are still waiting for the primary for the seat to replace Lindsey Graham. That election is coming up. Um, Now, I believe they were doing a uh, Republican debate for this race. I think, let me see if I can find out when that race is. Let's see here. That already happened. No, it looks like it already had happened. Um, so Lindsey Graham's sister, Darlene Graham, was apparently debating her challenger, Amy Andrews, for the Senate seat. Um, Now, she was asked in this clip, um, where moderator Greta Van Susteren asked Graham if Taiwan and the South China Sea are national security issues for the U.S. and why. Graham responded, I'm going to be honest here, I am not that informed on national security, but I do support the military. Then referred to her late brother, Senator Lindsey Graham, who was in the Air Force for 33 years. So I will do everything I can to support the military. She said, "My dad was in the Army. I am not a polished politician. Up here, national security is not my thing, not my area of expertise, but I do support the military." Well, that's a troubling comment. She's a sitting U.S. Senator, whether she wanted to be or not. She is filling out her brother's term, um, and now she is running for re-election. But she says she's not up to speed on national security, and national security is not her thing. But yet she's supposed to be voting for all of us. Now, I I'm not by any means as informed as a US senator, don't get me wrong. But that is not the best answer to give. She basically comes out and says, "Yeah, I don't know, not my thing. I don't care." And maybe I'm misreading a little bit into that, but it was a dumb thing to say. Uh, Former South Carolina State Rep Adam Morgan, a Republican, called it a stunning debate flop. Um, he wrote on Twitter, "The main criticism is that she is not qualified for this 6-year position. Now she reveals she can't answer basic national security questions." Former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley, who also previously served as governor of South Carolina, commented about the moment, saying on Twitter, "Lindsey Graham was well informed on the United States national security. Darlene Graham admits she's not. This is not something you inherit, and it is critical to in the U.S. Senate." Oh, okay. I was apparently still wrong. Graham and Norman, the person she was debating, it was a Republican debate, advanced to a runoff but finished in the top two spots in last week's primary. I thought there was something else going on there. It's been hard to keep track of all of it. The latter focused on his opponent's lack of governing experience during the hour-long debate hosted by South Carolina ETV and Public Radio. He said of Darlene Graham, "We have an unknown candidate who I'm running against." Uh, Later claiming that Graham was the Democrats' preferred candidate. South Carolina Governor Henry McMaster appointed Graham following her brother's sudden death last month with Trump's full endorsement. She announced shortly after that she would run for a full term. Now, I didn't expect her to run for a full term, but this is a pretty big flop. Okay. And if she somehow wins uh, this runoff to be the nominee, granted, I'm not sure when that runoff is going to be. Um, it'll be in the next week or two. So we're already down to 77 days, roughly, between now and November. She's going to have less than 70 days, maybe just over 60 days to mount a full campaign against Dr. Annie Andrews. Yes, if she somehow wins, she is going to be the more qualified candidate. But the other Republican, this Norman, I don't know a lot about. I'm not overly versed in South Carolina politics. I'm not in South Carolina. But uh, if either one wins, they're not going to have a very long time to run a campaign. They are basically going to have to run on the idea that they're Republican. That's it. That's their message. I'm a Republican, vote for me. That's it. It's ridiculous, right? They don't have a game plan. They uh and they're trying to make up for the late passing of Senator Lindsey Graham. Now, the only reason there is even somebody in her seat is because, or in his seat rather, is because there was a Republican governor of South Carolina. That's why we haven't heard any updates on Mitch McConnell. Now, supposedly, Mitch McConnell has been released from the hospital. He's been home, resting, recovering, doing physical therapy, all of that, doing home health. Yet, people are watching his house, and supposedly nobody's coming or going. It's all very suspicious. Now, part of me thinks that they are going to try to drag this out as long as they can. Why? Because then they don't have to worry about Andy Bashir actually um, replacing Mitch McConnell with a Democrat. I think that Charles Booker is the Democrat that's going to be on the ballot in Kentucky. And by having him run or having Bashir nominate him and put him in as the new senator, he would now be the incumbent. And that would carry a lot of weight. That would make it easier for him to get elected. So it's a reason we don't know what's going on with Mitch McConnell. But Lindsey Graham had his seat filled by his sister, and now she is in a very tough runoff fight. In my opinion, I am now moving South Carolina closer to a toss up because of everything. If Lindsey Graham was still alive, I would have called South Carolina a gimme for the Republicans. And it still might be, but it's going to be a lot of a tougher fight. Now, that means Republicans are going to have to spend money defending South Carolina, a seat they weren't planning on defending. I think Lindsey Graham was pretty much just like Chuck Grassley here in Iowa, that he can go ahead, um, throw his name out there, says, I'm running, and doesn't have to campaign, doesn't have to fundraise, does one event every year, and he can take 60% plus of the vote. I think Lindsey Graham, maybe not to the full extent of the 60% of the vote, but Lindsey Graham could have an easier chance. His sister Darlene, she's already trying to capitalize on his name recognition. She just dropped her married last name. And it's because they're terrified that they could lose this seat. Now, the math for the Senate is pretty out there, okay? Democrats need to flip 4 seats. Depending on your view of Fetterman, they might need 5. Now, some people are saying that El Sayed in Michigan might be a lost cause. I don't know that Michigan is definitely going to flip. It's going to be a tougher fight. But right now, I haven't seen anything indicating nationwide that the Republicans are going to flip any seats to the Democrats. They haven't been able to so far. I think we are up to like 36 or 37 nationwide seats that have flipped from Republican to Democrat, with 0 going the other way since Donald Trump got reelected. So that alone, I think, gives Syed a boost in Michigan. But where can they pick up the other seats? Well, we talked a little bit earlier. Alaska could be a pickup. I've said before, Mary Peltola could be a win. She's a very popular statewide Democrat in Alaska. You have Ohio with Sherrod Brown. He has won statewide before. Again, I think that one is going to be, it's a tough fight, but it's doable. I just mentioned South Carolina is now going to be a tougher fight. It could be, it's a longer shot pickup, but it could be a pickup. You have Maine. Susan Collins is about as unpopular as she has ever been. That could be a pickup. And then, let's see, you have North Carolina with Roy Cooper. Roy Cooper has never lost a race, period. He has never lost an election he has been in. So uh, he's very popular statewide Democrat. He could win. You have Texas and James Talarico, where Donald Trump, because he was mad at John Cornyn, uh, fucked everything up by endorsing Ken Paxton. Ken Paxton beats Cornyn in a primary. Uh, and Paxton is about the most flawed candidate outside of Donald Trump you could run for office. Well, he's out. So Talrico could win there. You have Iowa with Josh Turek versus Ashley Hinson. Another possible pickup for the Democrats. They need 5 of those races. Realistically, 4 to 5 of those races. it's doable. And that's before anything bizarre comes in. You're talking about Kentucky with not having Mitch McConnell on the ballot. That could change things. Florida, Byron Donalds, no, he was running for governor. Moody's running for Senate in Florida. But if Byron Donalds is an anchor like we were talking about earlier, um, Florida could flip. And I'm going to say it like this, and I mean this legitimately. If uh, Even if we don't get Maine, Ohio, or Iowa, if we get Texas, Alaska, and Florida, Jesus Christ, we basically have control of the Senate because I can almost guarantee North Carolina. If we get all of those races I mentioned, if they all flip to the Democrats, they're going to have a major majority, not enough to bypass the filibuster by any means, and not enough to pass anything around a presidential veto. But those are all seats that would not have to be defended, and it lowers the number they need to keep control of the Senate after 2028. Now, we are already going to have to start looking ahead the minute these midterms are over, toward 2028, and who the Democrats are going to run as a front runner, who the Republicans might run. I talked about it, I believe, on yesterday's show about how, what's his name? Pete Hegseth, the original DUI hire, was floating the idea of a presidential bid. I mean, they don't have good options for 2028. All the Democrats have to do basically is show up. Now, I want to talk about Donald Trump lost a primary in Wyoming. Uh, Trump's choice for Wyoming governor loses GOP primary. President Trump's pick to succeed term-limited Governor Mark Gordon, Republican, is projected to lose the Republican primary, according to Decision Desk HQ. GOP State Senator Eric Barlow is set to defeat Wyoming Superintendent of Public Instruction Megan Degenfelder and three other Republican candidates, including 2022 gubernatorial contender Brent Bean. Doggenfelder was also backed by the state's lone House lawmaker, Representative Harriet Hagerman. Now, remember, Hagman, sorry, was the one to replace Liz Cheney. Barlow's victory adds another loss to Trump's endorsement track record. His first choices in Iowa, Georgia, South Carolina's governor races all lost their primaries earlier this cycle. Barlow campaigned on respectful, effective leadership, according to his campaign website. State lawmaker is all but certain to become the state's next top executive. Cook Political considers the seat solidly Republican. On the other side of the aisle, Ken Kasner is the presumptive Democratic nominee. He has previously run for the post and lost. So Donald Trump loses another primary where he endorsed somebody. And this is what I mean. The Republicans they act like his endorsements mean something, right? And they do for a little bit, but they don't always. It's not like he is infallible. Just because he says something, just because he does something, it doesn't mean anything. We've been hearing talk about this idea, and I believe it came up in Mike's live uh, over on TikTok about this idea that somehow the Republicans are going to fire the clerk of the court or the clerk of the House, and that's going to somehow prevent um, the new uh, the new Democrats from being sworn in after the November election. Here's the thing, the way I understand it is the uh, the clerk of the House just sits there, much like Mike Pence was supposed to do on January 6th, 2021. It's a ceremonial thing, and just basically accepts the winners and says, okay, you're all here, vote for a speaker. We're here, gavels in the session, and they vote for a Speaker of the House. There is not a mechanism for the clerk of the House to start rejecting um, uh, representatives. Why? Because states control elections and states certify their own elections. And that's that, right? Once the state certified the election, that new person is the sitting representative. Now, um, going forward with it, also, the other part of that argument is going to be this idea that, oh, well, Mike Johnson just won't seat the new members because, well, he did that with Adelita Grijalva and kept her out for over a month. Yeah, but that's different, okay? Because come January 3rd, 12 noon, the House of Representatives ceases to exist. There is no Speaker of the House. That position does not exist. Why? Because the first order of business when the House reconvenes is to select a new speaker. They will vote. Presumably, that new speaker is going to be Hakeem Jeffries. Now, like him or not, Hakeem does have his own problems. He is not anywhere close to the powerhouse I initially thought he was going to be. I really had much greater hope for Hakeem Jeffries. And one of the big problems with Hakeem is he refuses to endorse the idea of universal health care. So, anyway, they are going to select a new speaker, presuming it's Hakeem Jeffries. He gets sworn in. Then, once he is sworn in, he swears in the rest of the chamber. Unless they have the majority or a bunch of Democrats vote in a Republican to be speaker, the Republicans have nothing to really do about it. It's mostly just a process. And I believe firmly that the Republicans, or the Democrats rather, are going to know who their speaker is going to be going into that vote. They are going to have a plan. They're going to say, okay, we're going to go vote in and we're going to all vote for Hakeem. We're going to all vote for AOC. We're going to all vote for uh, whoever, right? That is going to be their play. And then when they have their person and they've had these votes behind closed doors, they're going to be ready. They are not going to have the same dysfunction that the Republicans showed in 2022 when it took them 18 votes in the first time in over 100 years to not have a first ballot speaker selection before they finally landed on Kevin McCarthy. And it wouldn't surprise me if the Democrats put back into place the no voting out the speaker rule that was in place under um, former Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi. See, that's only been a recent addition, and that was something that Kevin McCarthy put in place basically because he had to give away the farm, including the ability for his own party to vote him out if he wanted the job. And he coveted that job more than he really thought about the harm it was doing to his own party, but they also couldn't come to a consensus. Now, I mentioned briefly Hakeem Jeffries not supporting universal health care. I'm going to spend the last couple minutes talking about that for a second. He won't come out publicly and endorse the idea that we need to go to universal health care. And I think we are getting to that point where universal health care has to be the next logical step. We can't continue to fix Obamacare. Obamacare did help while it worked. Republicans have effectively broken it. Um, And now we need to scrap it in favor of universal health care. The problem is going to be getting Republicans on board. Now, doesn't matter what name you call it, Republicans don't like it. And one of the biggest complaints that I hear, well, two of them are, you're going to wait so long to have a doctor's appointment. Problem is, you're already waiting. I know people who had to wait 6 months to get a specialist appointment to be treated for kidney stones and things like that. I mean, they were managed at that moment. It was not uh, a problem where they were worried about um, something happening immediately, but still they had 6 months wait to get in to see the specialist. And we hear, well, the wait times are going to be bad. The wait times are already bad. And then the other main argument is going to be, well, you expect the doctors just to do the work for free. No. Nowhere in universal health care does it mean the doctor and the clinic and the nurse and everybody else involved doesn't get paid. It just means the government makes the payment. And unlike um, private insurance, there wouldn't be, if they do it correctly, you wouldn't need prior authorization. You wouldn't need um, any of that. They would just go in, you go to the doctor says you need XYZ prescription. You go to the pharmacy, you fill that prescription, and you go about your day. You maybe you have a copay, depending on how they set it up, and you're done, right? Everybody gets paid. The government handles the insurance billing on that side. You pay a little more in taxes, but now you're not paying for a premium. You're not paying copays. You're not paying a deductible. And probably part of that would already be roped into what you are already paying for Medicare and Medicaid that comes out of your check already. It's not that the doctors and the clinics would be doing it for free. That is a fear mongering talking point because they're afraid of what it might mean. But ultimately, I think that is where our nation is heading. And I think you are going to see universal health care in this country figured out probably within the next 10 years. Because our model, I don't think, can sustain another 10 years of growing like it is when people are already having to worry about paying for their monthly prescriptions or getting evicted. In some cases, worrying about paying for their monthly medications or going bankrupt. It's unsustainable, and we're going to have to do something. And I think the Democrats are going to have to shift to that point if they want to continue to win elections. All right, that is going to do it for today's episode of the Analytical Iowan Podcast. I want to thank you for taking the time to join me today. Hope you have a great day, and I will be back tomorrow with another podcast.
That was Eric. That does it for our analysis today. If you appreciated us cutting through the noise to get to the critical context, please make sure you're subscribed to the Analytical Iowan podcast on Spotify and YouTube. We'll be back tomorrow. Thanks for listening.